Great to be here, everyone. Today, to my session today on Viva Connections and taking your employee experience to the next level. Really, this session is not meant to be a hardcore technical or development session. It's really meant to be. A lot of people are confused on what Viva Connections and what the Viva employee experience is all about, and I want to kind of guide you through that and how it pertains today to today's hybrid office. So before I begin, my name is Noorez Khamis. Everybody calls me Rez. I'm a Microsoft MVP and also VP Technology and co-founder at two companies, CryoSpark and CloudSpark. That's my Twitter handle, and that's my session code for anybody that's evaluating it, but we'll get back to that a little bit later. Please, thank you so much to our sponsors, of which one of my companies is CryoSpark. Please visit their websites. They're giving us some great prizes throughout the event. Evaluate the sessions. That's really important as well. I'll try to monitor the chat as I'm doing my session as well. So please put your questions in the chat as we go along. A little bit before we begin, just a little bit about my companies. I got two companies, one called CryoSpark, and we are a Microsoft 365 partner focused on everything consulting around the Microsoft 365, Teams, Azure, and the Power Platform. So we'll help you organize and build your whole Microsoft 365 digital workplace solution on SharePoint and Teams and everything around the hybrid office that we're talking about today. And then we also have another company called CloudSpark, where we build Teams-based embedded apps. So all about the employee experience platform, exactly what Viva Connections is all about, where we're building people operations and a mini HRS built right within your Microsoft Teams ecosystem. So if you're requesting time off or reserving time back into the office or doing your expense management, it can all be done through our set of apps within Teams. So where did we want to start today? Where I wanted to start today was just talking about the modern workplace and how it's really evolved. We're now in a hybrid workplace. From what's happened with the pandemic and COVID and everything, nobody's really going to want to go back to being a full-time employee. And this global pandemic has effectively changed the way we all work and the workforce in general. What's happening is that with this pandemic and the change in the way everybody's working, it's resulting in a lack of in-person contact. And that normal in-person contact that we had for the day-to-day activities that we used to do pre-pandemic. And this has been leading and inevitably leading to a feeling of disconnection for your employees that are either on premises, physically on your work environment, or working remotely, or working in that hybrid manner. So what organizations need to do is enhance that experience within all of their tools, within their productivity tools, within their HRS tools, which are within their people ops tools and their communication tools, to help their employees and help them be engaged in modern ways to make sure they stay happy, to make sure they stay satisfied, and in turn stay longer with the company. And the latest statistics I've seen, if you lose an employee, it could cost your organization $50,000 to $100,000 in productivity lost from ramping up the new employees. So it's more and more important to think of these concepts that we're talking about today with the employee experience. Sorry, I just lost my little slide. Here we go. And all of this engagement that we're talking about today, it needs to happen in the tools your employees are using every day, such as Microsoft Teams, such as SharePoint, such as your Exchange, such as whatever tool you're using. It does not have to be Microsoft, but it's really important we have that continuity for people to work in those teams. So why are we focused on people with this employee experience? You can just see from these stats how important it is from an engagement, from a satisfaction, from a retention, and in turn, a profitability perspective. You can see that 86% of top performing companies reported that digital training systems and digital training programs has boosted employee engagement and performance. Because if you're going to be engaging your employees to keep them learning new things, they're not going to get bored. They're not going to start looking for new jobs, and learning and engagement is all part of that. We see that during the pandemic, 70% of employees have reported higher stress levels, and 40% are actually experiencing decreased mental health. It's more and more important to give them that employee experience for this reason. From a satisfaction perspective, 94% of employees say they would stay at a company longer if it invested in their learning and development. From a retention standpoint, an engaged employee is 12 times less likely to leave their company for those who are not engaged. And then from a profitability perspective, organizations with highly engaged employees have 21% more and greater profitability. So it's very easy to see why it's important as an executive to invest in the employee experience. So this session is all about Viva Connections. So I wanted to get a little bit into Viva Connections, but before we get into that, we need to kind of understand the rest of the offerings. And throughout today's sessions in this Viva track, you're going to be experiencing bits and pieces of all of these different offerings. And you've kind of, in the previous sessions, you've seen an overview of the holistic offering, and you've seen how to deploy Viva Connections. In some subsequent sessions, you're going to see about insights and topics and learning. So these are all important aspects to consider when it comes to Viva. From a Viva Connection standpoint, that's what we're talking about right now, so I'll skip over that. But from an insights perspective, it helps you from a productivity standpoint and from a well-being perspective. You, as an individual, need to see that you're working really hard, you're working too hard, you're working nights. It might be time to take breaks. It might be time to actually book some time off in your calendar to actually get work done instead of going through all those meetings. You as a manager, from an insights perspective, might want to see if your employees are constantly working after hours. You as a leader perspective want to see which departments are actually talking to each other. That's what Viva Insights brings you, that knowledge within your organization, how everybody is working together and how everybody is working, and helping them actually not work when need be, right? We don't want our employees to be burned out. We want them to be satisfied and happy. From a topics perspective, Viva Topics is another offering where it brings you to the concept of knowledge management. I've been in the industry a long time, and what we've seen is that knowledge management has always been a problem for large organizations. It's been a problem for finding the right people. It's been a problem for finding the right content, the right acronyms for everything that's happening. Having one central location in Viva Topic helps you with that knowledge management aspect by bringing the power of ML and AI to surface that knowledge automatically with knowledge curators to make sure that the knowledge that was curated by using AI is the right knowledge that we want to disseminate to the right rest of the organization. And furthermore, Viva Topics gives you the capability of surfacing up that knowledge within your everyday experience, such as your Teams, such as your OneDrive, such as your SharePoint, such as your Outlook, right? So you're going to be able to surface that knowledge everywhere. And then Viva Learning is all about learning and development and giving your employees the tools right within the tools they're using to facilitate that learning for their skilling and growth. Now, one of the things that we're trying to teach organizations is that learning, Viva Learning is not an LMS. LMS you could tack on top of that, and you could pull in your existing learning offerings. And I'm sure Serge and the rest of the team are going to be talking about learning a little bit later. But I don't want to go into that. But that's kind of what the Viva ecosystem is all about. And soon, there's a new offering that's been announced that's going to be part of the Viva ecosystem. And it's about objective and key results as part of an acquisition that Microsoft did for the ally.io. So let's dive in what this session was all about. It was about Viva Connections. So Viva Connections is all about communications and culture. First of all, the purpose is to keep everybody connected. We want to encourage those meaningful connections across your organization by enabling employees to discover the content that they need easily. It's enabling your employees to have the relevant communications that's targeted towards them, whether it's news or event. It's encouraging your employees to be a part of the organization and the communities are in the organization. We want to make it easy for people to contribute as well as part of Viva Connections. We want to foster a culture of inclusion and empower every employee to contribute their thoughts, their ideas, and share their feedback back on improving the organization. We also want to unite and inspire the organization by aligning everybody around the mission, the vision, the strategic priorities, the executive outcomes that they're looking for, right? So that's kind of the purpose of Viva Connections, and being able to surface that all through a mechanism we're all used to as our corporate intranet. And as part of the corporate intranet, we do that with whether it's our desktop or browser or multi-device, but it's through Teams in our corporate intranet and our Teams mobile phone as well. Now, before I get into the rest of the presentation, I kind of want to take a step back here and talk about communication versus collaboration. I find this helps my clients a lot when I start with this, because they have a hard time understanding what Viva is all about in general, but they have a hard time understanding what the difference between communication and collaboration and the tools that Microsoft is giving us for Teams and SharePoint and Yammer and when to use what. So I like to use this slide, right? So with some common terminology that you need to know when you're doing a Viva Connections deployment. A Viva Connections deployment underneath the covers is a SharePoint Online Modern website, right? If you're going to be creating a SharePoint Online Modern site, you need to know some of important terminology such as communication sites, because when we're deploying a corporate intranet, what we're doing is communicating to the organization. So that's why Microsoft came up with this modern site called a communication site, which is geared towards a corporate intranet. There's also aspects of team sites and teams. So you're able to create teams within Microsoft Teams, and you're also able to create in SharePoint Modern this concept of modern team sites. But these ones are more team focused and secure. The third one is a home site. This is kind of the root site that drives Viva Connections, and I'm not going to go. I'll probably quickly touch on it a little bit later. But you need to have a home site. Right now, there's only one home site per tenant, which is a big problem for a lot of my clients right now. To have that home site, because you might be a multi-organization under one tenant, Microsoft 365 tenant. So you're allowed one home site, which turns into your Viva Connection site. There's also this concept of hub sites. If we're all used to that old classic SharePoint classic concept of subsites and site collections and subsites underneath them, the new concept in the SharePoint Modern world is the concept of hub sites. Everything has gone flat. There's no more concept of subsites. And Microsoft did that for a whole plethora of reasons, and I'm not going to go into that. When you're building your SharePoint Online Modern communication or Teams sites, there's other concepts that are important, like pages. If you're used to SharePoint, then you know that you create all your web pages in SharePoint. It's pretty much that. And then your lists and libraries. Everything is built upon your lists and libraries. So now, if we look at the left-hand side in this diagram here, in the left-hand side, we've got this concept of employee engagement, and this concept of a root intranet and your functional communication sites and departmental and functional communication sites as well. So these sites that we're talking about here form the basis of your corporate intranet. And these sites are really meant to be organizationally public. What do I mean by that, organizationally public? You don't want to create, in some edge cases, you want to kind of put information that's secure to an organization, to a department there. But for the most part, everything you're putting here is to be communicated to the broader organization. So as an example, on my root homepage of my intranet, this is where I'm putting things like, as any employee, I will use this site as a launching point to get to all of my organization's internal corporate digital assets and applications and be informed of the latest organization news and events. Now that's my homepage, but from a departmental communication site, which is still organizationally public, because me in IT, I might want to disseminate the new Wi-Fi password, right? So an example is, as any employee, I'll visit this site to find departmental specific news, resources, and assets here. As a content publisher, because I have access to publish on my own departmental site, I will publish departmental specific resources, news, assets here for everyone in my organization to see. So these are quick links to applications. Finance might have a link to their expense system, right? They might have a link to their travel management system. IT might have a project request tool, right? So this is kind of what the tools and the apps and the links and the communication and news event you want to disseminate as a department to the rest of the organization. Then lastly, as any employee, I'm going to visit this site, this departmental site, to engage with the department, to find the information I'm looking for, to link to the apps that I need to get to the departmental news, to find out what's going on with that department, who are the people I contact, right? So I can go endless and endless. Now, on the right-hand side of the equation, this is more departmentally private, or other private, as I like to call it. So it's team-focused and secured, right? So usually these are within team sites and Microsoft Teams. Whereas on the left-hand side, it's more on the communication aspect, because we're communicating. And Viva Connections really falls on that left-hand side, and it combines the services you see on the left-hand side with Yammer and SharePoint and Teams together. On the right-hand side, we have departmental team sites and Microsoft Teams that are secured. I know that I have to be added to those team sites or Microsoft Teams to be able to access the content within them. So as a member of a department, I use this departmental team site or team to collaborate with other people in my department. Or if I need to share something with specific departments, users, or divisions, I go to this departmental team site or team. Same with the project. For a specific project, for internal and external users, we host digital assets related to the project within a project team site or a collaboration team site. When I need to build a line of business application with forms and workflows, I'll create this line of business application team site or a team. So that's where SharePoint and Teams really comes in. So when we're talking about Viva Connections, we're really focused on that left-hand side of the equation for this organizationally public corporate intranet. So why don't we pause here and take a quick tour of Viva Connections. So let me see if I can find a demo of that. Here we go. So here's a sample Viva Connections site I've set up. Okay, I've gone and configured with some demo data and everything like that. So I want to give you a quick tour. So Viva Connection is composed of three main things. The three main things it's composed of are the feed, resources, and the dashboard. Okay, so right away, when you come here, when you think about resources, this is practically any page on my corporate intranet. That's what I kind of think about as resource. So all the items that I can get to my mega menu on my corporate intranet. Okay. On the right-hand side, I see this concept of dashboard, and I'm going to go into deep dive into that in a few minutes. So the resources are our links on our corporate intranet. The dashboard is on the right-hand side, and then there's this other concept called a feed. This is the feed of all that we're talking about as part of Viva Connections here. Okay, so we're going to go a little bit deeper into that in a few minutes, but I want to kind of tell you everything that Viva Connections is composed of. But notice that I'm looking at my corporate intranet within my Microsoft Teams. That's one of the big aspects of Viva Connections. So now when I'm looking at my Viva Connections within my corporate intranet, within my Microsoft Teams, I can also look at outside of Microsoft Teams just as a regular SharePoint communication site that we're used to. Right, so that same corporate intranet, I clicked on the little globe icon and pulled it out into a browser. So really, if you already have a SharePoint modern corporate intranet and there isn't another site designated as a home site, you're able to surface your SharePoint Online Modern Communication site that's been designated as a home site within an app on the left-hand side. So here's my app called Viva C, right? Here's my app. And now, me as an employee, I have a really easy way to get to my corporate intranet from Microsoft Teams within this personal app. And the cool thing about this is because I'm spending 70 to 90% in meetings all the time anyhow. So why not surface my corporate intranet here? I don't want to go to a different location to do my task and my daily duties. I'd rather want to do everything from this one app because 60 to 80% of my time is in meetings, is in chats, is in phone calls, it's in my calendars, it's in my communities, it's in my teams that I'm collaborating with everybody here, right? So this is where I'm working with all my files. So why can't I get to my corporate intranet from here? Furthermore, I want to do everything that I normally do within the mobile, within my mobile phone. So everything that we're seeing here is feasible to be done within our mobile phone, within the Microsoft Teams app. And why should I have to go to a different application to do everything I want? And that's where the dashboard will come in, and you'll see that in a few minutes. That's on the right-hand side. So that's really what Viva Connections is all about. So when we look at Viva Connections, there's also on this left-hand bar, what we call the SharePoint app bar, which is surfaced within your Viva Connections. So this is an app bar. This app bar is customizable to show the navigation you want. So as people click on it now, from a usability perspective, every company that I've been dealing with, lots of employees don't even know, hey, did you know that you click on a second time on this personal app, it pops open this menu? I can get to all my normal mega menu items directly from here. I could customize this to go to different apps and services as I go through my whole workplace experience. I also see some of the recent sites that I've accessed. I also see some of the news that's important to me, that's been targeted to me, that's been boosted, right? And soon you're going to see lists. So this capability is constantly being expanded on the Microsoft side of the equation. So by setting something as a home site, you kind of get that. And by setting something as your Viva Connection site, you get that kind of pop out app bar capability, which is pretty much exactly the same which you see here. Right. So when we go to SharePoint, this SharePoint app bar follows you throughout your whole experience. So you're able to see your important links on the global navigation side. You're able to see the sites you've recently accessed, you or frequently accessed or followed. You're able to see news that's important to you and be targeted to you. You're able to see the files that you've recently accessed as part of it. Now, by setting something as your home site, you get these superpower capabilities. So you also kind of want to set this as your home hub site. So you can add more sites to it, and you could add hub children because everything in SharePoint Modern is flat. And you get these kind of superpowers where you can now do all these things like set your hub site settings and your navigation logo, and whether you want to show what do you want to show in the navigation. Do you want people to be able to create their own sites and be able to request access to be able to add them here, right? Do you want to customize your global navigation, right? Do you want to use your global navigation when somebody clicks here to be the same as your hub site navigation or hub site or your home site navigation? So a lot of really powerful capabilities, and there's lots of other settings here, and that's not the purpose of this session, but really you could do theming, you could do on the navigation, whether you want cascading, whether you want a mega menu, lots of other capabilities that you get there. And then once you set up your Viva Connections, you get this link here, which is set up Viva Connections once you set it up as your home site. And this kind of takes you directly to the dashboard. And this dashboard is nothing more than what you see here. Now, remember what I said earlier is that we want to make it really easy for users to be able to do the work in where they're working, which is Microsoft Teams. So that's really the purpose of the dashboard. And when I go to the dashboard here, that's the same link that we saw on the right-hand side, set up Viva Connections, and we go to View Dashboard. And this is a really cool capability that Microsoft has given us, that we could start interacting with these, what I'm calling mini SharePoint framework web parts, and build them quite easily to be able to surface up the information we need. As an example, Microsoft has given us this site called adaptivecards.io, because in the background, what a dashboard is a group of cards. You're able to build your own cards and integrate with any of the systems that you have that have open APIs or REST-based calls. You can just get a developer to tie it in. And sometimes you don't even need a developer. So you see this card here. Let's say I wanted to surface it up in my Viva Connections. It's really easy for me to do. And let's say that I want a stock update and to actually pull the stock from a different call. It's actually pretty simple to do because there's a data JSON and a template JSON. And then we just need to write some code that pops in that information. So what, for example, one of the companies we're working right now is a real estate company. And right now, all their they sell commercial real estate, and all their staff in the field have to go to this other system to actually being able to pull the information about the property they're looking at. Now, what we've done is create a card, right, which is accessible from their mobile phone. And I'll show you the mobile phone in a second to pull that information so they don't have to go to a different system. So you can see the benefits of that. And so take a look at this data and this template here. And if we look at the card on the dashboard side, if we edit this card, we look at this sample one that I've created, and there's a nice little card designer. All I've done was paste that template JSON in the data JSON. And I'm able to change the header. I'm able to change the size of the card. I'm able to put a title here. You see these are equivalent, right? So it changes as I'm putting it in. And so if we look at this card here, which is great on mobile. So I've incorporated that card JSON right in here. So I can link to something. I can make it look beautiful. I can interact with data. So that's really the purpose of this cards. And this is one of the main reasons, one of the best things about Viva Connections that'll help you take it to that next level. So this is really the big advantage, because a lot of people are saying, okay, what is Viva Connections? It's just a corporate intranet with all these web parts, but these dashboard cards really take it to that next level on top of some other stuff that I'm going to kind of show you in a few minutes. Now, what about the mobile side of the equation? So let's actually do a quick demo of how this all looks on mobile. So I'm going to pull up this little app, handy app I have here, and show you an example of my corporate intranet. So let's see if it works. There, it's connecting. And right away here, we have our corporate intranet called the Spark. And you see at the bottom on the second personal app that I have listed here, I've pushed that out and see those same card views. I'm able to, those same cards that are here, I'm able to surface them up here, right? So that those cards are able to do really powerful things, like this one attaches to a API where you can find a property and do all this other stuff, right? So you can see how as a user, you can do some powerful things when you're in the field as a frontline worker, when you're working from home. Considering nowadays the statistics are, we spend way more time on our mobile devices than we do on our browsers or our laptops or desktops or you name it, right? So that you need to be able to be productive on your mobile phones and tablets, not only your corporate intranet. So now, remember at the beginning, I said the Viva Connections is composed of the dashboard. It's also composed of the resources. So pretty much aligning to what your left navigation is, right? So you can get to all those pages within your corporate intranet. And then lastly, it's that Viva Connections feed. So it's really the dashboard, feed, and resources. And then Microsoft's going to build up a ton of capabilities into the platform around that. Now, the next thing I wanted to show you was, so let me just stop with the mobile version. X this out. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you, and this was probably covered in the previous session, but for those people who did not see the previous session, I actually want to take you through how do we configure Viva Connections. Okay, so I'll go back to my slide deck here. So did a quick tour. We did a mobile. So how do we configure Viva Connections? So the way we configure it is we want to get a SharePoint Online Modern intranet set up first. that's really the first. Oops, might have lost me for a second, but that's the very first step. We want to get this corporate intranet set up on SharePoint Online Modern. And then we want to set that as a home site. And then we want to go and configure that SharePoint app bar and the global navigation and all the settings around that. Then we want to create that dashboard like I just showed you. Next, we want to make sure that the feed, the Viva Connection feeds, has the relevant content. And how you get that content, you'll see in a few minutes, is you got to start posting news. You need to start boosting news. You're going to need to post this concept of organizational news, right? And then you can also start using Yammer communities, because that feed pulls in information and news across all of your Microsoft 365 ecosystem. You want to make sure you deploy it and set up your mobile on the team side. And then you want to launch it with your end users, and there's a link there that'll kind of guide you through that, right? So I'll quickly show you one thing here on how to do some of those quick settings. So if you're on the admin side, you first want to set up your home site. You could do this by PowerShell, or you go to the SharePoint Admin Center, which I'm showing you right now. And in that Admin Center, we're going to have capabilities and such as being able to set your home site here. So here it is. You just specify the URL you want to be your home site. Right now, it's only one home site. You could do this via the GUI, or you could do this via PowerShell. Once you have that, then you'll be able to specify your Viva Connections. Then, when you're ready to actually get it working in Microsoft Teams, you go to the Teams Admin Center, which is right here. And then when you go to your Manage Apps, you see this new app here. You'll see one called Viva Connections. So if you just do a search on Viva Connections, then you're able to customize that. There's a little button here at the top. And you click on that edit button, and you're able to give the name that you want to show as a personal app on the left-hand side. You're able to give the description, the website. These are all mandatory things, what icons you want to use, right? You make sure to follow the proper guidelines for all your icons and your colors, and it'll start appearing really nicely. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. And then once you're in there, you'll be able to configure your global navigation like I showed you earlier. And items like that. In the end, you push out a policy, and you could push out the policies on the setup side of the equation. So in my global policy, I've specified that I want this Viva Connections and then actually to be installed automatically for all my users. And I want it to be the first app they see or the second app they see on the top left-hand side. Now, all the other offerings are there as well as part of the Viva ecosystem, and as well as the community, Yammer Communities app, because it's all tied together. You want to encourage the use of communities in your organization for that openness, for that employee engagement. You want to have everybody use at least the free versions of Viva Insights. Now, this session is not a Microsoft licensing session and a Viva licensing sessions, but the one thing that I'll tell you do get for free is Viva Connections. Okay? Insights, topics, learning, and the new OKR are probably going to be paid offerings, but this one is actually free. It's one of the cool things we can do from a free perspective. So this is Viva Insights, and then here's Viva Learning. And then soon, if you're licensed for it, you'll be able to see Viva Topics as well. Okay, but that's other people are going to go into those sessions a little bit later. Now let's go back to the presentation because we're coming to time. Okay, so so how do we take advantage of this new Viva Connections and as an organization, from an organization perspective? And I wanted to bring this up because it's really important. There's a new term called EXP, and it was coined by this guy named Josh Bersin, who's really well known on the HR side of the equation. And there was a recognition of the industry of this new category of technology solutions called the Employee Experience Platforms, or what we like to call EXP. Okay? And that EXP is that digital platform that puts people at the center by bringing together all of your systems of work, your systems of support, and your systems of well-being and into an integrated employee experience. It provides people with the resources and support they need to succeed and thrive, no matter the location we're in, whether they're in their mobile phones, whether they're in their desktops, whether they're in the browsers, whether they're remote somewhere, or whether they're on site in the office. And it helps employees identify ways to balance well-being while being productive at the same time, and to respond to the changing needs of the organization over time, and helps managers develop their teams and respond to employee needs, and allows them to make decisions that improve team performance, work-life harmony, and well-being. And it also helps business leaders drive better outcomes with tools to help them understand and guide how work happens. And it provides you as an employee and the people with the resources and support they need to succeed, no matter their location. So that's kind of what EXP is all about. And that's why we built a product called CloudSpark EXP, which I showed you a little bit at the beginning. And that's why Microsoft built Viva. It's all about the employee experience. So an EXP doesn't involve just an IT department or an HR department or a communications department to go and deploy it. It involves multiple departments being involved. So in order to solve those problems we saw in those earlier slides of engagement, retention, satisfaction, productivity, you need to take a holistic view of engaging your employees. Not just IT rolling out an application, hey, this is out. No, we got to look at the holistic view of all of our employees, right? And with all those problems that we mentioned to try to solve them, right? And it requires partnering with all of those departments, such as corporate comms, HR, IT, learning, leadership. And you need their commitments to provide that greater employee experience. So where we can facilitate growth and development, communications, company resources, insights, knowledge, communities, well-being, all together as one. Viva as an entire platform addresses everything you were seeing here on the right-hand side. In Viva Connection, although it's more focused on a corporate intranet with communications, announcements, news and events, company resources, Yammer communities, surfacing them up, it actually encompasses everything you see here because you're able to tie in all of those other aspects using those dashboard cards. And really, it's a system of experiences that helps organizations create this thriving culture with engaged employees and inspiring leaders. And the cool thing about Viva is that you're going to be already leveraging the Microsoft technology investments you probably already have. So as an example, you might already be using Yammer for communities for those casual clubs and hallway water cooler conversations. Those are used for knowledge mining within Viva topics and surfaced up in Viva Connections. You're already using a SharePoint Online modern intranet. So that's able to evolve to be able to communicate across the organization, engage your employees, connect with the information and knowledge, right? And you're able to use those dashboard cards to surface up all the information in your organization. So it's really evident by the fact that Microsoft is pushing this employee experience centered around this adaptive cards and dashboard cards and insights. And you can surface all of their investments within those dashboard cards within their Viva Connections ecosystem. Now, what about the feed? So we did show you an example of the feed, and I'm going to quickly show you that just one more time so you can see it. So if I go to my demo here and I go to my feed, I'm just going to check the chat because I've been talking a lot and hopefully everybody can hear me. We're good. Okay. Good. So here's Viva Connections, and here is my Viva Connections feed. And you see how it's pulling out the news and the Yammer conversations and the community conversations and the news that's being boosted and posted. You see the fact that it's boosted. You're able to see the amount of views. You're able to share it. You're able to like it. You're able to go into the post, right? So a lot of capabilities within that feed, and that same feed is what's shown in your mobile device. And that feed is nothing other than, if you're used to SharePoint Online Modern, is nothing other than a web part. So if I was to do a search here, I could just find the Viva Connections feed. You're just dropping that web part in, right? And then same with the dashboard here, that's a SharePoint Framework web part. So I'll discard my changes there. And that's kind of what the feed is. So how does the feed work? It's really important because it's surfaced up. People all over your organizations are going to be posting these news, these events, these Yammer community chats, and important information that you need to be aware of that's relevant to you. So first of all, it's permission based. So you're only going to see the feeds that are relevant to you. You're going to be able to see things that are boosted by corporate comms or whoever is in charge of the news items. And then you're able to see things like all company announcements, featured conversations on the Amber side, community announcements, news, boosted news. So, and Microsoft has their own algorithm on how they're attacking this. So one of the things that I constantly get from my customers is, what is that algorithm? What does that algorithm look like? So 1 second. And that algorithm really is used by the ranking of that Yammer content in the feed is like how content is ranked when it shows up on that feed, because how you scroll on and you're up and down in your mobile app, it's really important to you. So first slot, it's kind of promoted by an admin, so they could be as featured conversations. And the second one is content is ranked as a relevant score to the user. So Microsoft has this magic sauce in the back end, which they use to actually rank it based on the whole feed. So this is kind of how Microsoft does it from a chronology perspective. So the content is sorted into 3 buckets, 0 to 4, 5 to 8, and 9 to 30. If there's a boost or featured capability, it'll kind of push it up a little bit higher. A source priority, so top-down messaging. And then engagement, so how many likes, how many comments, and all that. So that's kind of how Microsoft looks at that. Now, the next thing is a dashboard cards, and this is kind of the most important way that I see Viva Connections being able to engage your employees and how you could take your Viva Connections and corporate intranet to the next level. And this is using this concept of these dashboard cards. So as an example, these cards are going to show up in your Viva Connections homepage, which is the corporate intranet homepage, and also your mobile phones. And you could also surface them up in your apps. So as an example, we build apps that surface up those same cards as well. Now, the way you're going to be engaging your employees by doing cool stuff like this. So as an example, we've developed a reservation app where people are reserving their time back into the office. And because organizations are finding that everybody wants to work remotely all the time, and they actually have to ask people to come into the office. So a way to engage their user is, as an example, hey, did you know that Annette was coming into the office tomorrow? Hey, we know you talk to Annette all the time. She sits next to you in the office. Why don't you reserve a cubicle right now? Or here's your upcoming office reservations. Don't forget to look about the policies of your upcoming building reservation. We've got other types of apps which are tied into communities. Hey, did you know Jack is going golfing tomorrow? Why don't you join Jack and join the golfing community to go golfing as well, right? So this is how you can take the power of these dashboard cards to the next level by using the insights in your data you already have. Okay, so this is kind of the next level way of thinking when you're using Viva Connections, because as I said, another example was we have a customer on the commercial real estate, they need to find property information. So why should they have to go to another app when they could just look up the property from here and it's easily tied to their other system? It doesn't matter whether it's a Microsoft system or not. It's simple JSON and a simple API call. And Microsoft is making this easier and easier for organizations to work with every day. Now, you may be asking, where do we start, right? So I kind of showed you a lot of information here. You just don't go, and if you're on premise on SharePoint, just don't go press it, get a tool and press the go button. It's not going to work. It's probably going to fail, because you need to kind of really think about the methodology and how you're going to be performing that migration to SharePoint Online model. So the first thing is, as with any other corporate intranet, you want to think about the information architecture. So what is the navigation going to look like? How are people going to get there? What about the global navigation versus the hub site versus the home site? What about the levels of navigation? How are we going to integrate and test with our departments that the navigation is right? One of the true tests is a new employee should be able to come to your corporate intranet and find what they're looking for easily. So navigation is one element of information architecture, but there's other elements such as a search architecture. I want my corporate intranet and my Microsoft 365 ecosystem to be the Google for the enterprise, where I can just search on what I want to be able to find it. So that's why information architecture is really important from a search architecture perspective. And then we have a page design perspective. And then we have a content types and metadata. The better metadata and the better tagging you have is going to make it easier for your users to find the content they're looking for. So that all is encompassed in the information architecture. Next is the migration strategy. The migration strategy is usually where a organization's the hardest part of these types of projects, because what we find is that 60 to 80% of the data is probably not relevant anymore. So there needs to be a huge migration assessment done when you're migrating to Viva Connections. And because you don't want garbage in, garbage out into your new system, right? You only want to migrate the content that's relevant, and 60 to 80% of the content could probably be archived in some manner. So really you need a migration strategy when you're migrating to Viva Connections. So then next thing you want to think about is the governance and the business and technical governance, as well as the security and compliance. So who's going to be maintaining the system? What is the excellence program? What is the champions? Who are the champions? Who are the departmental content authors? Who are people putting content up just for the sake of it and never going to maintain it? Your corporate intranet is going to die for sure. It's not going to be useful to users because they're not going to trust it. So not only from a business perspective, but from a technical perspective, are you going to allow external users, right? So those types of small decisions. What about data that is PII data, or data that you're not allowed to store from a security and compliance perspective? What about records retention and sensitivity? These are all topics which we're going to cover in subsequent sessions today. So that's really important. Those two things are key to your Viva Connections and corporate intranet deployment. The third thing is you want to think about your employee experience and business outcomes and the migration related to those. And what are the business outcomes? An example, we're working with an oil company which has safety testers in the field, and we're creating these cards that are audience targeted to them, so that they could do those safety checks right when they're in the field. So you want to go through that exploration and those workshops and do those card sorts and testing and talk to all of them to figure out what their business outcomes are, and then give them the right solution. And then lastly, from an adoption, change management, and training perspective, you want to make sure that what you're pushing out is loved by everybody. If it's not loved by everybody, then you're not going to get adoption. If it's not going to make them productive, if it's not going to make them happy, if it's not going to make them engaged, then you're going to fail. And then lastly, obviously, the training. And then you could do this with all the Microsoft 365 technologies. And I'm not saying do everything Microsoft, but what I'm saying is that what you could do is use Microsoft as the interface to integrate and tie into everything with your other systems. So they're spending 60 to 80% of their time in Teams anyways. So why not integrate their other systems with dashboard cards and the Microsoft Teams app? So really the first step is migrating to modern SharePoint. Deploy Yammer Community so that feed actually works really well. To have that culture of employee engagement and giving them that great employee experience. You want to make sure you deploy Teams. A lot of organizations are only using the calling capabilities or only using the chatting capabilities. What about Teams and the data within those as well? Then you want to configure Viva Connections mobile and desktops. And then you want to start building these dashboard cards to give your employees that great employee experience and make them more engaged and productive at the same time. So that kind of brings us to the end. I know I'm a little bit over, but thank you so much, everybody. And here's my session code. Take that session code down. Give me some feedback on the session, how you think it went. Hook me up on Twitter. I'm around. If you need to get a hold of me, I'm on chat here. I'm also probably going to be sticking around for a little bit of moderation. Again, my session code is 310480 when you're doing your evaluation, and you could win a prize. And let's take a step back to see if there's any questions. Thank you to our sponsors again. And then let's take a step back for Q&A. Serge.
Thank you very much, Rez. That was a great session. I'm sure everybody enjoyed. There don't seem to be any questions in the chat.